But one segment that is struggling a bit is the electric vehicle space. And I'll tell you why. The Indian government is now not in favor of extending the electric vehicle subsidy scheme beyond March 2024. Remember, the subsidy scheme was what was keeping, that incentive going, and that the decision making was a bit easier since subsidies were given both to EV two-wheelers and three-wheelers. However, now a final decision has not been taken yet. EV subsidies to the tune of 1,200 crores have actually been on hold for more than 13 electric vehicle players for close to a year now. So we'll get a discussion going on what this means for the industry. Parikshit Luthra, first up, gets us more on the multiple challenges that are confronting the electric vehicle sector now. Parikshit, over to you.
Top government sources telling us there is no proposal under consideration as of now to extend the FAME subsidy scheme beyond March 2024. A final decision is awaited. At the same time, EV subsidies to the tune of 1,200 crores have been on hold for more than a year now, and this is leading to a shortfall in sales. So where do things stand as of now? In the month of March, Hero Electric and Okinawa have seen a drop in sales in the range of 48% on a year-on-year basis, and certain others have seen a 42% drop in sales. Industry body SMEV says there has been a 25% shortfall in targets since the festive season last year. One of the reasons for this is that subsidies for 13 companies have been on hold since May last year due to a probe relating to alleged misappropriation of subsidies. Subsidies to the tune of 1,200 crores have been on hold. Now, the SMEV industry body says subsidies are on hold for companies representing at least 95% of the market. And subsidies for 4 other EV companies like TVS, Ola, Ather, Hero MotoCorp have been on hold since March this year, pending inquiry into complaints of subsidies being availed on products costing more than the eligibility limit of 1.5 lakhs as per the FAME scheme. Now, all these 4 companies are in touch with the government. Ather, for one, has slashed prices of its top variant to 1.45 lakhs to meet the FAME criteria. Industry sources say if subsidies continue to be on hold, then there could be a demand softening and drop in sales as well. But here's what could really impact the industry, and that is the government saying there is no proposal as of now to extend the FAME scheme beyond March 2024. A final decision, however, is awaited.
Okay, thanks a lot for that. We find out more on this with Gagan Sindhu, who's the Director at Council on Energy Environment at Water Centre for Energy Finance, and Hemang, Jani, the Retail Equity Strategist at Motilal Oswal Financial Services. We also have Mitul, Shah, who's the Head Research at Reliance Securities, joining in. So a full house here. Gentlemen, thanks a lot for joining us. First, I want to start with Gagan. If you put the numbers together, right, the EV sales in FY23 went up 187%. Of course, this is on a low base. But now, this probe to end the FAME subsidies, do you think it could dampen demand for the electric vehicle sector? Because as my colleague Parikshit was just mentioning, 1,200 crores of subsidies have already been held back to almost 13 players, including the likes of Hero Electric, Okinawa. If these subsidies are withdrawn or put to an end, what kind of impact do you think it would have on demand, Gagan?
Sure. Thanks for that. So without getting into the specifics of individual companies, let me just say that there's several kinds of incentives available for consumers who are looking to buy EVs in India, right? So there's a national level FAME subsidy, there's a GST incentive, and there's also state level incentive. Not every state has state level incentives, many do. So all three really combine to I would say, inverse the inherent price disadvantage that EVs face at the time of purchase, to make EVs more advantageous, to make EVs even more competitively priced versus ICEs. So, it's not just one set of subsidies that matter, it's all 3 sets of subsidies that actually drive that attractiveness of EVs.
All right. I just wanted to follow up on that point. In light of this, do you think that entire EV adoption theme that we're talking about, I think we have a target over here of close to 80% EV penetration. Do you think that this target is realistic, or do you think it gets pushed back a little bit, Mr. Sidhu?
So I think that the number you're referring to is perhaps not a stated target per se, but it's the electric mobility vision that Niti Aayog had, right? Yes. So one of the things that I think India can actually do with is an official EV target. So, we have one for renewable energy. We also have one for green hydrogen. So I think an official EV target, which gives direction, which gives market certainty, which shows where the ambition is very, very important.
But, the big question also is, can the industry manage without subsidies, right, after March 2024? I guess my colleague Nigel was also coming to that point, that will the adoption become much slower? Will margins start to get impacted? Because as we've been hearing, a lot of these companies are going big in the EV space. I mean, we just heard about JLR investing £15 billion. Of course, that's for the global EV market, but back home in India as well, a lot of companies are putting plants on board, going big on investments. Now, if these subsidies are put on hold, do you think margins could get impacted, and can EV adoption slow down? Mitul, you've been tracking this space closely, so I wanted your thoughts on this.
Yes, this kind of a support from government is very essential. I would like to quote here one very interesting example of Chinese EV industry, where this government gave support for more than 10 years. Then the industry became healthy in terms of size as well as profitability. So this is a very initial years wherein nearly 80% of the players are like a startup, or technology support along with the financial support is essential for them. Barring few big existing two-wheeler players, most of the nearly more than 80% are kind of a startup. So they are completely relying on this support from government. So withdrawal of this support will certainly pose the hold, and they'll put a situation will become tougher for them, because as you all know that adoption of EV still as of now is very negligible, just in terms of a low single digit penetration. So we need to go far away from this, and for that maybe in other form or extension of FAME, or in other terms also, support is very essential for next few years for the industry.
Absolutely. Hemang, come in on this. I mean, China and other developed economies are far ahead in terms of EV adoption, and that's also largely because of the government support that, some of these markets like China have got for more than a decade. What do you think the government needs to do here, A? And B, for now, the government is not considering any extension to the FAME subsidies. But do you expect the incentives to be completely pulled off, or there could be some incentives to, pockets like, say, buses? EV buses are picking up in a big way, or even EV two-wheelers. Your thoughts?
So, good morning, Sonia. Thanks for the opportunity. I think clearly the way things have gone as far as EV is concerned, particularly when you look at the cars, India is a small car market and a price-sensitive market. And when you look at the cars which are being offered, Tata Motors and clutch of other companies, the pricing of these cars is slightly on a higher side for the EV product. Same is the case with two-wheelers and for buses also. So unless the government, gives some sort of support to the manufacturers and to the final consumer in terms of this pricing advantage, the growth will surely not be, like what we've seen in China and many other parts. Also, Sonia, what is important is that the entire ecosystem, the charging stations, that infrastructure requires a lot of money, and only when the government gives certain support will it be possible to have that. So without a significant support and a commitment from the government, the entire growth that one is really looking at could actually slow down.
Okay. So, I wanted to come in on two-wheelers a little more, because a lot of these companies are putting up plants. They're going big on the EV space. So, Mitul, let me get you in on this. How important do you think is the FAME subsidy for sustained two-wheeler adoption? And if the subsidy is withdrawn, if there's no extension, then what do you think the impact would be on the working capital? Would there be a lot of working capital pressure for some of these companies like, say, Bajaj Auto? TVS is going big in the EV space as well. What do you think the impact would be?
Yes, Sonia, as you pointed out rightly earlier, that 1200 crore kind of a amount is stuck up with the government for these players, and working capital is entirely depend on this support from government. So in case of two-wheelers, these large players like whether it's a Bajaj or Hero or TVS, they would probably still able to survive because their profitability is not depending on EV. Their IC engine business is able to fulfill all the requirement. But for other players like whether it's Okinawa or even Ola and all those type of players, where the support and financial strength is not very strong for them, so government withdrawing this benefit will impact their performance to greater extent. May not be at least to these top players, but small and medium-sized players within two-wheeler space will have a more impact compared to four-wheeler, where all the players are having a big pocket and they are able to support their capex without any external support. But two-wheeler is a different situation.
Got it. That's an important point you make, that some of these larger players, they won't have a major hit perhaps on profitability because EVs is not a very big part of their business up until now. So yes, they could take a hit, but it won't hit operational performance too much. Gagan, I wanted you to come in on the inflection point, because the bigger question is this, right? Have EVs across the board, two-wheelers, four-wheelers, reached an inflection point such that even if the prices go up by 50,000-60,000 rupees, for example, people will still go ahead and buy? So even if the FAME subsidies are withdrawn, which at some point it should be, demand may not get hit. Do you think that inflection point has been reached?
So, last year we had more than 1 million EVs registered in India. But if you scratch the surface, the bulk of them, more than 50%, 50 to 55% of them are actually E2-wheelers, with most of the balance being E3-wheelers. So really not anywhere when it comes to the other categories. The second point is, Sonia, you said inflection point. That's a tough one to answer. But what I can tell you is we've sort of seen evidence that subsidies do matter. And we've seen evidence that higher subsidies do translate into higher volumes. Let me just give you an example. So in a recent study that CII conducted, we sort of tracked not just the FAME national level subsidy but the GST, but also state level subsidies. And we particularly looked at states which had EV subsidies or EV incentives versus states which did not have EV incentives. And we found that for those states with those incentives, they actually saw volume growth which was 2x better than states without EV incentives. And then we sort of looked a bit deeper into E2-wheelers, because that's really where the bulk of volumes are coming from. And we saw that states with higher incentives, actually saw volume growth which was almost 5x better than states with lower incentives. So what I will say is clearly, incentives, subsidies do matter. What's the right time to wean oneself away from that? A difficult one to say.
Okay, gentlemen, appreciate your thoughts. Thanks a lot for joining in and helping us assess what would happen to the sector if and when the FAME subsidies are withdrawn. What we understand is that the FAME subsidies may not be ended entirely. For some pockets, like say buses, commercial vehicles, or even some electric two-wheelers, subsidies on EVs may still continue, but that is of course only conjecture at the moment. There's no confirmation. As of now, 1,200 crores worth of EV subsidies have been put on hold, and that has impacted the industry quite a bit. But that's